Now, if you're thinking you can't put all these guys in the Hall of Fame, no, yes, you can. The players of the recently retired generation, the guys who played in the 80s and 90s, are still underrepresented. The players of the 80s and 90s were basically born in the 50s and 60s. So let's look at that 20-year period. There are 27 players in the Hall, again, born in the 50s and 60s. Compare that to the players born in the 1930s and 40s. There are 41 in the Hall from that 20-year period. And from the 1890s and 1900s, again, another 20-year period, there are 59 of them. There is plenty of room in the Hall of Fame for the great players of the 80s and 90s. Don't be a nostalgia snob. It's okay to put great players in the Hall of Fame. And there's an easy 10 on this ballot. I'm a nostalgia snob. I love old-time baseball and look at studying the history of the game. But I think we're selling these guys short. I think these are legitimately great players. The ones that we think are second tier, I think they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing that their votes are growing. And one of the things I always try to caution is, like, in some of these cases, guys are getting over 50% of the vote. It's hard to get in the Hall of Fame. You need 75% of the vote. You need to convince 3/4 of a group to do something. We got 4 people up here. What will the 3 of us agree on for that? So I think it's very difficult to get in the Hall of Fame. And I do think as the voting body has changed, we've eliminated 100 voters. I think those voters anecdotally skew older. And though those guys are more likely to be against PED users and against the new analytics. So even if you just want to, like you did, put them in 2 different camps, I think that the group that is voting now and will continue to add as we go along, because we're adding voters all the time as they get to 10 years, will look more favorably on guys like Schilling, Musina, Raines, et cetera, who have great modern analytical cases.
See, I think it is clogged because the guys you just mentioned, the guys that are in my group that I give a yes to, those guys, you have every year now, every 3 straight years, Ronnie, of strong first-year candidates. And you have 7 guys clogging the ballot. All those guys could be Hall of Famers in the old days. Like, absent steroids, they'd be in. So I think for some reason we're thinking, oh, Edgar Martinez, Mike Mussina, they weren't dominant. Now, if they played in the 30s and 40s, they'd be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, first, I want to say thanks for giving some love to the guys that played in the 80s and 90s.
You're welcome.
One of those guys. So
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I think that it was interesting in your fine piece there. You said that 493 was made to look paltry. Right. And I think that's what's happened to some of these players, is that they played on the beginning end of some of the steroid use. So we tend to look at players that played during that time, oh, he didn't hit this, he didn't hit that many home runs or whatever. Alan Trammell was a fantastic player. If you match him up with Barry Larkin and Ozzie Smith, he matches up very favorably with both those players. And Tim Raines I played against, to me, was a Hall of Fame player the second he let off a game.
Yeah, Todd, I think that we look at it now and we just think that the standards are and this is like Christopher Mad Dog Russo, is affecting people's thinking out there, God forbid. But it's like DiMaggio is the Hall of Famer. It's like, no, there's room, for I don't know, guys who are lesser than that, but are still all-time greats.
That's why I love that graphic that you showed earlier, because I think a lot of people look at it and just assume everybody's getting into the Hall of Fame when that's not the case. It's harder and harder. And I think changing the voting body, anecdotally, like Joel said, I think a lot of those older voters tend to go and look at the Hall of Famers and say they're not as good as Joe DiMaggio, so I can't even consider them. But they are Hall of Famers. A lot of these guys are Hall of Famers, and I think pushing out some of those older guys, people that haven't been in the ballpark in years, for people that are more around the game, talking to the experts, I think you're going to see Tim Raines should be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. I'm assuming he'll probably get in.